Hi all, how's the form? Welcome to Arena, a podcast from the Irish Examiner. My name is Maurice Brosnan, and I'm delighted to be joined by Joe Callaghan after two eventful, very interesting World Cup semi-finals. Joe was at both of them. Joe, how's the form?
The form is good. The form is good. There's a lack of sleep, but what we saw over the last two nights kind of made up for all the rest, especially last night, obviously.
How did you logistically do both?
With about, I think it was, my Garmin told me 2 hours and 14 minutes sleep. Although I must say, the first semi-final was obviously Tuesday afternoon in Dallas, and I was sitting beside a Argentine Canadian blogger type in the press box. I'd come across him before actually, but he is doing this World Cup in a camper van, and so whatever about my complaints about my route, he drove from Dallas to Atlanta, which is a 14-hour drive between the two semifinals. Mine wasn't so bad, but mine wasn't great. I left Dallas at about 10 p.m. after the first semifinal, flew backwards. Remember, everyone, we will make up for our carbon footprint in years to come. Flew backwards to Denver and then forwards to Atlanta to land here yesterday morning at 6 a.m. So my Garmin told me I got 2 hours and 14 minutes sleep between those two flights combined, and that was enough to get me through what was the great surrender of Atlanta yesterday.
A lot of people remember your apprehension at the very start of this tournament about whether or not it would actually deliver. So just before we talk about the games themselves, do you feel like you've got the World Cup that you kind of hoped you would?
I feel like we've got more than enough unbelievable moments on the field. And again, I think if we remember kind of to our preview chat of the tournament on the eve of it, we kind of wondered whether the football could save Gianni Infantino and Donald Trump and all of the awful overtones and undertones of this tournament. And the whole reason that they can be so brazen in what they do is because football always saves. And I think the last 48 hours have proven that in two very different ways in terms of, and I know we're going to talk about kind of the final itself, but the two semifinals, completely different kind of contests, two sets of completely different teams. And yet, they're two of the most compelling games I've seen in a long, long time. And then to kind of zoom out, I do think it has. I think there's been, what are we left with at the end of it all? We're left with the Pico Lopez World Cup final. So in lots of ways, Cape Verde being the fairy tale story of the World Cup. And here we go, kind of the only country in the world that knows how to kind of suppress both of the World Cup finalists is Pico and Bosnia and Cape Verde. So there's definitely been more than enough stories. I think, look, if we want to kind of go a little bit inside baseball on the journalist's journey across America, it has lagged, but every World Cup lags a bit when the games slow down, even kind of chatting with the Irish colleagues who are here at their first World Cup, and kind of over the last kind of 7 or 8 days, you've kind of seen the first whimperings of, God, I can't wait to get home, because it's kind of, when you're in the throes of it, the group stage, and obviously we had a last 32 stage now, which was for the first time. You do a game, you're tired, you get your work done, but you go back to your apartment, or maybe you go to the bar or whatever, and there's another game on. But once you get to the quarterfinals, that stops. That all stops. I think we had one day where there were two games. And so, it has lagged, but every World Cup lags, and yet it has delivered incredible contests. And now we've ended up with a final that I think is incredibly compelling in its own way.
I want to read you out some headlines here. I just put England into Google, so we'll get right into it.
Let's do it.
Thomas Tuchel lost his bottle and pure cowardice ended England's World Cup. England's mentality minnows strike again. In 60 years of hurt, this might be England's most painful World Cup defeat yet. Are those headlines fair? Was this as bad as it's already been depicted?
I think they're very fair, and I was afraid myself that we were the Irish journalists were in very close proximity to our British colleagues yesterday, our English colleagues, and I was like, am I leaning into the kind of Fleet Street of this? Because I used the word kind of surrender quite high up in my report for the Examiner, but it was like it. I can't remember too many games that I've been at where you can see it so clearly in real time, right in front of you, and quite literally right in front of us, because where we were, that piece of grass that England ceded to Lionel Messi was kind of right down in front of us, on the right side and on our side of the pitch. on our corner, and to see it happen, and to see Thomas Tuchel not only kind of start to hand it over, but then continue to do more things that actually, like, every single move he made, Argentina would have wanted him to make it. And so I do think, like, those headlines, because we have to go back here, and this is, sometimes the privilege of the job, but I've seen England in the flesh eliminated from all of the last 4 World Cups and the last Euros. So I've kind of been there in the room and in the mix zone when those conversations around and those kind of, obviously we know headlines are not crafted by the journalists, but the conversations and the narratives around Gareth Southgate and the tactical cowardice around the exit to France in Qatar or Croatia in Russia, the Euros finals against Spain and against Italy, and not having kind of the idea that he didn't have the kind of courage of his convictions to kind of help lead a team that is clearly in the ascendancy or clearly good enough to go and do it, to actually do it. And instead, the FA went out and paid fortunes to bring in Thomas Tuchel, and he was to be the man who would do it. And in essence, he even won up to Southgate. I'm not sure Southgate would even have kind of been as blatant in kind of the, what was really, really interesting. I should have shoehorned it into a piece. Maybe I'll do it eventually. But when they did the team announcements yesterday, Atlanta Stadium, anyone who watches the NFL will know this would be watching an Atlanta Falcons game or the Super Bowl that has been there. It has a huge circular screen up the top. And so the team announcements were all very kind of rah-rah. Everything at this World Cup is rah-rah. And yet the Argentine fans just managed to drown it out. But they were announcing the England team, and really peculiar, almost like a just throwaway. Right at the end, whoever was the last player they announced, Jed Spence, I suppose, in terms of numbers. They played just a 5-second audio of Thomas Tuchel's interview with Gabriel Clark from the other day, where he was annoyed and he goes, this is mentality. If you could bottle it and sell it. And it's like, the England fans go. And, they did bottle it, but he bottled it. There was no selling, like, maybe he was too much of a salesman because he did bottle it. He bottled everything. Where was his mentality? And the clear light of day, it's not yet day here in Atlanta, but a second viewing, or, I watched a kind of when I did get back to the hotel last night, James Corden and his just about bearable at this stage, evening kind of review on Fox Sports was happening. But the highlights package was about 2 minutes long, and I was like, that won't cut it. So I got a 15 minutes highlights package. And, you know this from being a croaker at the weekend, Maurice, like you can watch a contest in the flesh, but you learn a lot. Obviously you do. But it's important to kind of, I think, when something's this big, to go back and see if it feels like it did. And it did, like it absolutely did. The compilation of the amount of time Messi had in the Messi spot, the spot where he hauled them back against Egypt. I was at that game too. And so to just see it all kind of happen in real time, it does feel like, for once, and there are some other headlines that maybe we'll get to as well, but for once, Fleet Street are kind of right on this. Like, this was a surrender. And we can talk about the players, and I think it's important to talk about the players, but ultimately the biggest investment England have made in their football, and the FA have made, was in bringing in Tuchel, and it's been a disaster.
And are we talking on the scale of, Sky Sports meltdowns to David Seaman being booed in mix zones? Like, where are we in the context of how this will end for Tuchel and for this English team?
Well, it was interesting. Straight away, you had some guys from the Times and from even the Athletic saying that, going with the party line from the FA, that the FA are very happy with him and what he's doing, and they want him to stay in place. In a weird way, it immediately kind of, because football just moves on straight away, I kind of thought of, oh my God, there's a 4-game Nations League window. Like, obviously Ireland's Nations League window is going to be so fraught in September and October with the Israel fixture. But if we remember post-Saipan, when Mick came home, and then you have the come down of those kind of September, October games, and suddenly Saipan, there was no moving on from it. The first boos of McCarthy after that. And the idea, even in my head, kind of having a beer last night, I was like, even if they try to cling on to him until September, the first goal that's conceded at Wembley in September in a Nations League game against whoever. I should look it up here who they have next. But the boos will ring around Wembley. This already feels like the narrative and the pull and the push. Like they have, wow. Sorry, their next game was actually against Spain at Wembley. And then a bit like ourselves, they go to Prague. Okay, so there's a 3-day window where they will play Spain at Wembley. Spain may be world champions, but they'll definitely be World Cup finalists. So if they lose that, but they'll go to Prague, and as we know ourselves, good things don't happen in Prague. And so if Tuchel was to kind of draw 0-0 there, or England were to draw 1-1, just the way the wind has blown in the last 24 hours and the way he blew the contest, I don't think it's savable. I don't. They may try to, but I don't think it's savable.
You mentioned why you think it's important to talk about the players there, and I'm curious to hear you think that, like, is it so I'll be honest with you, Joe, I was at Dado's live show while this was on. And,
I saw you show.
And with a couple of very animated Limerick men down the back of the room with this on a laptop while the show was going on. But the moment so we were watching this game without commentary. That's why I bring this up. The moment for the boys when they suddenly realised what was happening was when Dan Byrne and Nico Riley came on, and I think it was Tom who was beside me at the time, said out loud, "Oh, they're turtling up." Straight away.
Yes.
He said it live, but I get the sense that you think it extends beyond just that move at that point.
Yeah, it is, because and I do think that there's a quite a good analysis I read in The Athletic this morning as well.
Michael Cox's, it's very good.
Yeah, it's very good, and that played into it for sure, because I wasn't in the Azteca, but I was down in Miami, and it was just the hottest day. Like again, kind of this is just kind of the machinations of it, but the American press boxes are so awful. You're behind kind of, I've spoken to you about this, but you're behind soundproof glass and all the rest. And even though I knew it was 38 Celsius or 36 Celsius outside, I went to FIFA and asked to switch outside to be with my Irish brethren sweating in the heat. And so I did manage, they got me a seat, FIFA, for the England-Norway game. But my point is, I just had to sit there and watch it, right? I just had to sit there and watch that match. And the sweat and the exhaustion of sitting there typing was one thing. But to be out on the field in Miami, having played at altitude. So for sure, the physical aspects of it, the exhaustion and the unique kind of challenge of going from altitude down to Miami, and that plays a part. And yet, I like I say, I thought it was a very good analysis. They could have made it so much easier for themselves all the time. Like, Mexico didn't need to be the Alamo. Right, yeah. Like even when Gerald Kwanzaa is sent off, England could already been out of sight. Right, I know there's the emotional heave of Mexico at the Azteca, but Mexico they're not a great side. You know, with my kind of Canadian hat on, I've had to kind of cover them a lot in the last kind of 3 or 4 years. They're no great side. England are definitely good enough for that not to have descended into what it did, which was a dogfight. Then Norway, I think, what was so clear were Norway's World Cup had peaked after Brazil. Like, they were just delighted with that, and that was it. And of course, look, it's not to kind of, in hindsight, say that everyone that England beat were shit. That's not what we're doing here. But they never made it easy on themselves, because Tuchel never got tactically right from the start at any game after the Croatia game. Right, that was probably it. So you're talking 6 straight games where tactically he hasn't got it right from the start. So they're always moving pieces. They're always bringing someone on to fix someone. They're always like, Reece James, you come into the middle because actually I fucked up there by dropping Bellingham deeper again. And so, yeah, like your question on this was kind of, to go back to it, was the players. The players, of course, have a lot to answer for themselves. Because, you know, like, it was so interesting after the first goal, after the Anthony Gordon goal, the first goal, the first goal, the whole thing. Lionel Messi went over to the right and pulled Giuliano Simeone over to one side and gave him some tactical advice and said, "I want you to do this." And he was like a ferret; he was out over to do it. And that's what why aren't we seeing that from English players? Like, why aren't we seeing Dan Byrne, or why aren't we seeing John Stones kind of make some sort of tactical adjustments on the fly, even themselves. Not tactically in terms of kind of changing the shape, but how does nobody notice that, lads, this is all set up? Lionel Messi is whipping crosses in on us for Goodio here, and there are still 25 minutes to go. And maybe they despair when then they look to the bench and see kind of two more coming. I see kind of some reasons to, I think in that Athletic piece, they kind of justified the subs and say, oh, they made sense. They did and they didn't, because the one thing, I called it in my Examiner piece a kind of a hydration break that'll go down in infamy, because in that hydration break in the second half, Tuchel decides to bring Ezri Konsa in, okay, to add a fifth defender. And that's it. Like, England had already started ceding ground, but on the flip side, Lionel Scaloni makes a triple change. Lautaro Martinez is one of those that comes in. There's a few others. Otamendi comes in. And that is just the siege, right? So everything is laid from that hydration break. But there's still 18 minutes to go. But you gave Argentina everything they wanted, and you took away everything that they would have feared. To take off Anthony Gordon, to bring on a defender, it just, Argentina knew, okay, we've nothing to worry about behind us now. It's all forward. And Messi just went to where he went. And it was, again, kind of incredible to see it in real time and to see it exacerbated over and over.
Well, can you expand on that for me for a second? Because there's, I don't want to say a wide perception, but there was this idea maybe coming into this tournament that Argentina are effectively 10 players who will create enough for Messi, and that what necessarily they're doing tactically. I don't know if you saw there's a very cool graphic doing the rounds of Fernandez's goal where it's kind of Football Manager style, little dots moving, how they create a 1v1 and then suddenly Messi becomes a 2v1, square it back across to Fernandez, and whether or not Pickford should have saved it, we can talk about that again. But do you see something beyond just do you see a system as well as a star?
I think the system is it's just emotion a lot of the way with Argentina. Like they don't know any other way than a psychodrama of, oh my God, it's all going to fall apart. Like, staring into the abyss against Cape Verde, staring into the abyss even against Switzerland, but certainly against Egypt, 2-0 down with whatever it was to go. But the thing about them is, one goal is all it takes. I'm telling you that when Argentina scored the first against Egypt, I immediately started deleting some paragraphs because I knew this would now be a comeback story, right? Even at 2-1, you knew it. And once Fernandez arrowed his one quite close to Jordan Pickford, let's be honest. But once he did that, again, I kind of like leaned back in my chair and said to Dan McDonald from the Irish Indo, I said, it's only going one way now, and England were just never going to break. One graphic I did see is that they had 2 successful passes in a 22-minute period. England had 2 total passes, both between Pickford and John Stones. Unprecedented. But to go back to your graphic, or the graphic you mentioned, I must get a look at it, because Enzo Fernandez is, and he has made some questionable kind of performances for Chelsea, but at the end of the day was kind of the breakout talent that kind of helped Messi to the World Cup in Qatar. He is a €100 million central midfielder that Real Madrid apparently want. Like, so there are no, it's kind of cliche to say there are no mugs, but I think Christian Romero's having an incredible World Cup. Is he a shithouse? He absolutely is, right? Like, he absolutely is. But I think he's having an incredible World Cup. I think there's more than enough talent around them. I think Lautaro Martinez is a brilliant super sub. So, they have, it doesn't feel like they have a system. Certainly not when you think of 24 hours earlier and you're watching this Spanish machine just move and tick and suffocate the French in a way that you didn't even think was possible. The Argentines, it's all built, it seems like to me anyway, it's all built on 2 things. Obviously Messi, but also just emotion and the emotional heft of, we can do this, we can be dragged through it. And you think like, okay, it's not at altitude and it's not at humidity, it's in air-conditioned stadiums, but it must be taking a lot out of them. And then they spend a half hour dancing on down the end, and they all look kind of young and fresh and not a bother on them. They are a truly unique team. In fact, I think I kind of, whether in my Irish Examiner piece or another piece, included a quote from Scaloni, which I thought was really nice. And this was just in his post-match on the pitch, but he said, I'm out of words. It's a big win for our country, but for our people. We are unique. From my heart, and not to sound arrogant, we are unique. And I do think they are. I do think they are. You know, like, I've covered them now at 4 World Cups, and they've got to the final of 3 of them. You know, so, you know, they there's nothing else like them. And yet there are ways to beat them. And England had them where they wanted them, to be 1-0 up and on 55 minutes. And even kind of, I had made a note of it, but the sound that came after the Alexis McAllister crashing his header off the post, when it was infinitely easier to score, the Argentines, and even kind of the looks on some of the players' faces, was like, oh no, this is it. Like, it's only going one way here. And then we went to the water break, and then everything changed. It's incredible to kind of see it.
Do we have the 2 best teams in the tournament in this final?
It's a great question. I think we probably do. I think we probably do, because France just had so much stripped away from them down in Dallas that I think Spain ended that debate in such a comprehensive way. Like, Tuesday in Dallas was such a landslide everywhere but the scoreline. Like, it was 2-0, but in lots of ways it could have been 4. Like, it certainly could have been 3 with the Yamal one that was kind of flagged for offside. But so, given what Spain did to France, I think we do have the 2 best teams of this tournament. You know, like, collections of players are one thing, but what we've seen is that, you know, again, and World Cups and tournaments kind of show this to us. It's kind of a team that's built for a tournament. Really interesting to me is to just zoom back from whether they are the 2 best teams. I think they probably are. But what a World Cup for big name hires, in terms of what a disastrous World Cup for big name managers. Like, if you think of it, kind of the point of difference that so many people thought would kind of swing things here at World Cup was kind of the superstar, huge investment manager. Tuchel out in flames. Ancelotti out in historic kind of fashion, their worst performance in however long. Pochettino, like, dragging the Yanks out in infamy with a bit of help from your man in the White House. So, like, they were all huge. Like, I think they're 3 of the top 5 highest paid. And what we're left with is 2 coaches in Luis de la Fuente and Lionel Scaloni, who got promoted from under 21s. Like, I think their total lot of top flight club management is less than half a season between the 2 of them. So it's really interesting, that aspect of it. I find super interesting. And that, you know, where do those big nations go from here? It's kind of like, is Lee Carsley back on the table for England? Is that the big takeaway of the day? I'm not so sure, but it does kind of suggest something. And I'll be honest, I said this to you kind of it seems like months ago in my life, and I'm sure everyone's life, but when Ireland played Canada in the warm-up game, and I was covering that game, I do find Heimir Hallgrimsson kind of impressive guy. I think kind of this idea that every international team needs a kind of hugely kind of established, someone has done amazing things in a Premier League or a top flight. I think we've seen the folly of that in a huge way here at this World Cup. But yeah, I think, I'm not sure if I've looked forward to a World Cup final as much. Like, even just in the kind of, maybe it's the the parochial relief of seeing England knocked out. I don't know kind of how to put that, but chatting with colleagues last night, you know, I think there was definitely kind of a breathing out of our work is done. Okay, it's time to kind of relax. And then it was like, wow, yeah, actually Sunday in New York, like, if Messi had never won one, of course you'd be kind of going into it going like, wow, that's the whole narrative here. I hope Messi finally does it. But he has won one. And so between them, Spain and Argentina, I think there's incredible storylines to both. If Spain win, they are kind of crowning themselves as kind of this new generation that is equal, or maybe even might surpass kind of the 2010 and all the Euros winning kind of generation, 2008 to 2012. Argentina, if they go back to back and Messi wins one at 39, I mean, what an incredible story that is. So yeah, definitely the two best teams I have seen, let's put it that way. And the last 48 hours have proven that, you know, the way Argentina won in the very Argentine way, and the way Spain won in a almost completely different sport. Like, they may as well have been playing a different sport. Like, to go back to Dallas, like, it was just I said probably the most impressive late stage World Cup game I could remember seeing. Like, to see what Spain did to France and to make them look so ordinary, to have the best attack of the entire tournament not get a shot on target for 82 minutes. It was incredible. So I think it's a kind of a hard to predict final too, because I find Argentina so hard to predict in terms of, tactically. Is there even kind of a fully clear tactical model? It's more of a kind of an emotional model. It could go kind of either way. It feels a real toss-up of a final, and that's a very good thing,
And it's actually why I I love watching this Argentina team as much as I do. There's Heast in film, Tom Sizemore has a line in that where he says the action is the juice, and I get that sense every time I watch Argentina. Like, it's the act of the game itself. Like, they're living and dying by the game. It doesn't have this, the emotional baggage of maybe trying to get Messi his World Cup, and yet still you get the significance of just what they get out of just being enthralled to that. And I wonder, is it a lazy depiction of this final to kind of just talk about it in the terms of pure chaos versus control, like when you the way that they systematically just took France apart, or is there an element of truth to that?
I think there's an element of truth to it, and it's a great point. It's a great quote, because Argentina improve both kind of tactically and in terms of belief when they're up against it. Like, the kind of clarity of thought that comes from being 2-0 down to Egypt and 1-0 down to England. Because the first half here yesterday was just a dogfight. I found it quite compelling because of the history and who they are and the weight of what the first goal might mean. But it was, if that was your first time watching football, it was a dog of a thing. I kind of like made the point that kind of everyone tries to cash in on the Yankee dollar. It felt like that, that ancient medieval sport that they play in that town in England. It's kind of murder ball where they all kill each other. The ball is kind of secondary. It's just elbows and kind of, that's what the first half felt like. And yet it was only then when they went 1-0 down that Argentina found a clarity of thought, of purpose, of kind of like, okay, here's what we need to do. And Messi starts making his changes. So it's not quite kind of chaos against kind of, control. And yet of every team in here, even coming into it, Spain are the one side who are completely okay and in lockstep in terms of what they're doing. I didn't think Rodri had a performance like he had on Tuesday in him, but somebody kind of shared a quote from Pep Guardiola almost like 8 months ago when because Rodri I think missed 26 games for Manchester City last year. And Pep said Rodri will not be kind of back to his best by March or April. The best you will see will be Rodri at the World Cup. Kind of just Pep being spot on in the middle of a World Cup. So to see kind of what Rodri did and to kind of have a thought of him, Dani Olmo and Fabian Ruiz against this Argentine midfield, as much as it is a midfield, that could be kind of, obviously, this is no great kind of... at 7 a.m. in Atlanta, there's no kind of great insight into this, but like what that midfield might do to the Argentine midfield, and yet it could decide Sunday, and yet that might suit Argentina fine, because going 1-0 down or 2-0 down kind of seems to spark something in them that is just, it brings this kind of Argentine rise. I think that's what's so compelling to watch them. It's just like, it's like, what will they do next? And so far, over the last 4 years between Qatar and here, because, they were up against it in Qatar too. You remember, they were like, this is a team that lost to Saudi Arabia in Qatar 4 years ago. And against Mexico, I remember a game at the Lusail Stadium. I know I'm going all the way back here, but this is all of a piece. They were in the depths of hell until Messi kind of dragged them out of it. And a dog of a game against Mexico, and Messi scored a screamer, and that was it. Maybe there was a second goal right at the end. But they've had so many of those moments where you're like, how did they get here? And then they remind you. And that's a really compelling thing with any team in any sport.
Who's going to win?
I do think Spain will win, because I do think that Tuesday, because Wednesday there was so much emotional weight, political weight, cultural weight to it, it drove something deeper in Argentina. And yet, and we can focus on it because it's the latter thing, but Spain have an extra day's rest. that's massive in this World Cup where there's been so much travel and everything. I think just this kind of sums it up. But going into Tuesday, Spain had traveled 22,000 kilometers and France had only traveled 4,000 kilometers.
Wow.
These are the machinations of this World Cup. Spain have only played in air conditioning, and Argentina have played some in air conditioning and some not. But yeah, I do think that recency bias of, oh my God, how did Argentina do what they did against England, might have some of us kind of take the ball a little bit off what happened Tuesday. Because what happened Tuesday was such a complete takedown of the best attack in world football. How can you kind of look beyond Spain? I can't anyway. I think they'll do it, but Lionel Messi might have something to say about it.
Joe, well done on your phenomenal coverage so far. Enjoy the final, and I'll get working on the desk here to send the two of us to the Adderstone
That's
next year in tribute to Argentina.
The Adderstone, that's it. We'll do our tactical analysis of that. We'll do the little X's and O's. It'll be great.
Thanks, Joe.
Cheers, Maurice. Thanks, man.